Target acquired. Target destroyed.
Hey guys, I'm back. I'm Sukasa with Sucraft, and welcome to MechWarrior Online. Now, I know I haven't done any videos in like 3 months, and the reason for that, long story short, real life. I've been having a lot go on in real life, and maybe at a future date in a different episode I'll fill you guys in on what's been going on with me, but for today, we're just here to talk about MechWarrior Online. What is it, and is it any good? Well, MechWarrior Online is a free-to-play, online only, PvP only, there's no single-player campaign, and it's a licensed version of the MechWarrior franchise, all of the old MechWarriors 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. They were all actually based on the BattleTech tabletop board game, and this game, for the most part, accurately fits into the lore, canon, and timeline of the BattleTech universe, which is set in the far future of 3050. Yep, 3050 AD. And by then, humanity has expanded beyond Earth and colonized the stars. Thus, though, the nature of ground war has changed, so it's now predominantly fought by these gigantic 20 to 100 ton, roughly 50 foot tall, walking humanoid battle mech death machines. And in the game, you get to actively pilot from the cockpit one of these big stomping space robots. And you can basically think of these big giant battle mechs as a walking tank. The lower half and legs you can think of as the lower half and tracks of a tank. From its waist up, its torso turns side to side and twists, kind of like the turret on the top of a tank would. And staying true to the old MechWarrior, you have to control the two independently and separately at the same time. So in effect, you can have your legs turned running in one direction, while you turn your torso to look and fire in a completely different direction. And that's of course exactly how a tank works, you know, while you're driving in one direction, you turn the turret around backwards to look and fire in the different direction. All of that though gives the game much more of a simulator feel to it, like a tank simulator, than it does the feel of a FPS in a robot suit. You know, Hawken, it's more of a fast-paced, first-person shooter in a robot suit, and it does that brilliantly. It's a fun game, it's on Steam, I play Hawken too, but that's not what MechWarrior Online is. MechWarrior has always been a more strategic, slower-paced, simulator-styled game, and MechWarrior Online is no different. It's very akin to World of Tanks, actually. If you've ever played World of Tanks, and then you came here and played MechWarrior, it would instantly feel very familiar to you in the gameplay and mechanics. A lot of the game mechanics here, they work very similar to how World of Tanks does, where it's always team-based, 12v12. You only get one life, no respawns. If you die during the match, you have to spectate the other people on your team until the match is over. I've spoken to many players who played World of Tanks and then came here to MechWarrior Online, and they've all said that it felt very similar. It's just like piloting a walking tank instead of a driving tank. More importantly though, they all agreed that MechWarrior Online has far more depth, complexity, customization, and options to it than World of Tanks has. And a lot of that depth and complexity and customization stems from the fact that the devs have decided to adhere so closely to the canon and lore of the BattleTech universe, with a few exceptions for balancing reasons. The other MechWarrior games, but especially the BattleTech tabletop game, they had a crazy amount of customization that you can do to the individual mech's internal components. I mean, you could go in and pull out the engine to put a smaller one in its place. It would make the mech move slower, but it would free up space and weight so that you could then put more weapons and heat sinks and other internal components in. You could also upgrade those heat sinks. They would take up more space, but they would be more effective and efficient. And you could take armor out of like an arm and place it in the legs to make the legs more durable. There was just a staggering amount of things you could do to customize unique builds with your mechs on the tabletop game. And all of those things that I just talked about that you could do in the tabletop, well, you can also do them here in MechWarrior Online. So you can go into the Mech Lab up here, and once you purchase your own chassis variant, you can go in and configure it to create a unique build. And you can change the weapons around. You can add more heat sinks, carry more ammo or less ammo, change your armor values around, change your engine size. Just a plethora of ways you can change the mech around to create a unique build that suits your tastes. But you're limited in two main aspects. The first and most important is tonnage. Every component in here has a weight attached to it, and a weight in tons. The medium laser weighs 1 ton. A heatsink also weighs 1 ton. The short-range missile launcher, the SRM-6, it weighs 3 tons. Even your armor values, they have a weight attached to them as well. It's a small weight, but it adds up. And you have to make sure that all of your components add up to not exceed your chassis' maximum tonnage. The chassis I've had selected this whole time has been the Hunchback, and it's my 4SP variant. And the Hunchback is a mech that falls into the medium mech category because its tonnage is a maximum of 50. I said before, mechs range from 20 to 100 tons, and depending on what that mech's tonnage is, means it's going to fall into one of 4 categories: light, medium, heavy, and assault. Medium mechs are the all-around, good speed, good armor, and enough tonnage to carry decent firepower and weapons. And my Hunchback here is maxed out at 50 out of 50. So if I wanted to go in here and add more stuff in, I'm going to have to free up tonnage from somewhere. So if I took this heatsink out that weighs 1 ton, you would think, hey, the medium laser also weighs 1 ton. So you could take the heatsink out and put another medium laser in. I actually could not do that. That's because of the second main restriction, and that is what's called hard points. There are certain points on the mech that are hardwired to have the weapons, and these are completely different on every single variant and every single chassis. This Hunchback 4SP has 5 energy hardpoints and 2 missile hardpoints. So you can see I've already got my 2 short-range missile launchers and my 5 medium lasers. No more hardpoints left to put any more weapons. The hardpoint system also means that you have to put the weapons in specific spots on the mech. And it's easy to see because it's color-coded. The beam weapons, like the lasers here, are orange, and it's got this orange lightning bolt that signifies energy weapons. And you see there's a 0 next to it. That means there's 0 spots left for more. The missile launchers are green, and they've got the green missile with a 0 next to it. It means there's no more spots for any more missile launchers. And it also means, though, that the missile launcher has to go in this spot. I can't put it in my arm instead. I can't put the lasers in the torso spot. So I can't have lasers on my knees, despite how cool that might be, but hey, it lets me put a laser in my head, so that's cool enough. And you don't have to use all of the hard points available to you. You don't even have to use any of them if you don't want. I'm utilizing all 5 of the energy spots, but I don't have to. I could take a medium laser off the head and use that 1 extra ton to put another heatsink in, or carry more ammo, or whatever. I happen to like the head laser on this build, though, because of how high up on the mech it sits. I can sometimes fire over hills and terrain that the other lasers might be getting blocked by. You see this red dot up here? That's actually my head laser's emitter. And these models are very detailed, and impressively so. If I were to pull that laser off my head, that emitter up there would no longer be there. It's really cool how detailed they are. And you see these red dots down here on this arm, and these 2 on this arm, those are my 4 arm lasers. So it's really cool how detailed they are. And there's actually also a third type of weapon that we haven't talked about yet called ballistic weapons. These are made up by machine guns, autocannons of various sizes and types, and Gauss rifles. They actually have a purple color code to them, and we see there's no purple color spot anywhere on the mech. That's because the 4SP variant has no ballistic hardpoints. You might have been wondering why I keep saying the word variant. That's because there's different variants of the same chassis. The Hunchback is just one chassis. There's something like 3 or 4 dozen different chassis. Hunchback's just one of them. And every chassis has 3 to 5, sometimes 6 different variants of it. And each variant has different hardpoint types and different hardpoint locations to choose from. The 4SP gets the 2 missile launchers. The 4G gets 2 ballistics. And the 4H gets only 1 ballistic, but it gets all 5 of the energy spots. And we can go in here and we see that I'm actually not utilizing all 5 energies. I've got 1 empty energy spot here in this torso for weight and heat reasons. Anyway, that gives you a bit of an overview of the depth and complexity to the mech builds. As you can imagine, people are constantly trying out new builds and toying around and tinkering with things, so the overall meta of the game is constantly in flux and shifting and evolving over time, and it adds a very unique vibrancy to the game. Now, you can't actually start customizing your own builds right off the bat because you don't own a mech to customize. When you first start playing the game, you only have access to what are called trial mechs. The mechs you see here are the medium mechs that I currently own, aside from 3 of them. The Nova Prime here, the Shadowhawk, and the Blackjack. I don't own them. You see they say trial across them? They're the 3 medium trial mechs at the moment. There are 3 trial mechs for every weight class. So 3 light, 3 medium, etc. And you see in the trial tab here, you're forced to use these at the very beginning of the game. They're basically just default loadouts of random builds. They change over time, so next month during the patch they'll rotate the roster out. So it probably will be, you know, a Jenner and a Raven instead of a Firestarter and a Spider. So they change out over time, and they're just default loadouts though, and they're not customizable. So you have to use them for your first probably 25 matches. It sounds like a lot, but it goes by in like 3 to 4 hours of gameplay, and every match you play for your first 25, you get a huge bonus called a cadet bonus. And the bonus alone, after your 25 matches, will have netted you like 8 million. And you will have gained another 1 or 2 million just from playing, depending on how well you do. So you'll have like 10 million after your first 25 matches. You can see the Nova here is 9.9 million. So you'll be able to buy most mechs. Please, for the love of God, do not buy this Nova Prime. It is an utter waste of money. It is a reprehensible build, and there are no good builds for any Novas. They're complete junk. Ignore that chassis altogether. They recently got nerfed, and they suck ass. Aside from the Nova, though, just because you play one of these trial mechs and it sucks really bad, it's probably just the default loadout of it. Don't necessarily discount the Shadowhawk, for example. That loadout on the trail mech sucks. It's 1 PPC and 2 2 AC5s. That's not a very good build. But that doesn't mean that there are no good builds for the Shadowhawk. There are. The Shadowhawk is used in competitive gameplay. It's an amazing mech. Just the trial mech's loadout sucks. Now that is true for all of them, aside the Nova. The Nova is reprehensible. There are no good builds. Do not waste your money on a Nova. I say that about the Nova, but the Onion, as we call it, the Orion, there's really no good builds for it either. It's just not a very good mech chassis. Please don't waste your first few bucks on it. The Cataphract is a great heavy though. A lot of good builds for it. The Shadowhawk, like I said, amazing medium mech. The Blackjack, especially the Trail version, is really good. There's some good builds for it too. The Firestarter, an amazing light mech. The Jenner is also a great light mech. Now, when it comes to Assault, you can't go wrong with the Atlas. It's tried and true. The Trail version, not the best. The RS, not the best chassis for it. If you're going to buy one, get the DDC. It's top of the line. I like the Victor for Assault mechs because it moves faster than like any other Assault. But it's had its turn rate sort of nerfed. Still, it's a great mech. I like the default loadout too, so I'm going to load that one up. I'm going to pop into a map here and show you how this all works. When you first start playing the game, please, for the love of God, don't just jump into a match with no clue what you're doing. Go to the Home tab, click Tutorials, and it will load you into a proper interactive tutorial. It will give you pop-ups with, tell you what the controls are, and it'll walk you step by step of how to pilot your mech. I'm going to load into the testing grounds though, so we aren't constrained by that. And it's a lot like a tutorial, but sandbox. You can pick any one of the maps. There's like 12-15 different maps. They just added the mining collective like the other day, so they're constantly adding new maps in. And it'll allow us to shoot at some mechs. I'll show you how it all works. Alright, loaded up the Crimson Strait map in the training grounds. This is one of my favorite maps. It's a very large map, a lot of urban environment to it. I really think it's a good showcase though for the game's graphics. The lighting, and look at the water ebb and flow there on the left side. That is really beautiful. Textures are great in this game. All of that though is of course because the game is running the Crysis 3 engine. Everybody knows Cry 3 engine is gorgeous. Even Star Citizen's going to be using it. Although probably to better effect. Here it's not fully optimized. It could be better. Definitely not the worst though, but it could be a bit better. Devs are still working on it. There are two things I want to mention. I have my graphics pretty much set to maximum, but if you don't have the best computer, you want to tone that down some. The best thing, take your shadows and the advanced settings, turn the shadows to low. Everybody says run shadows on low, even I do. Very little impact on the graphics. Huge impact though on the FPS. So shadows to low. Also, DX9. It defaults into DX9. Leave it there. The DirectX 11 version, a little bit buggy, not fully fleshed out yet, so leave it in DX9 and shadows to low. Anyway, now we're going to talk about a few things that the tutorial does not cover, but you absolutely have to know and understand to be worth a damn at the game. First up, third-person view sucks fucking balls. You do not want to use it. It defaults you into third person, and you want to not do that. Third-person view, you cannot see the minimap, and you cannot pull up the full map. That's a huge no-no. You have to be able to see the minimap. You have to use the map. So, you want to get used to first-person view anyway. Get rid of third-person by hitting F4 by itself. Careful not to hit Alt. It will obviously close the game. F4 by itself. It will zoom you back into the cockpit. And it's a beautifully detailed cockpit. Why wouldn't you want to play like this? It's much better. Trust me. You want to get used to it. Much better. So, we want to stop doing that whole third-person view at the beginning of the match thing. And there's a couple other things we want to change in the settings. So, let's go into the settings here. Now, arm lock fucking sucks. Throttle decay, hate it. Third-person view, totally retarded. Uncheck all of those. Now, they've recently added these chat options, and right now it's in full retard mode where team chat is not turned on by default. What the hell? You have to be able to see your team's chat. Check that. All chat, up to you. If you want to be able to see the enemies typing in chat, I like to have it on, but that's up to you. Team chat is a must-have. Sensitivity is set way too high. Turn that down a bit. Everybody says turn your sensitivity down to be able to aim better. It's default set to half. Yeah, definitely turn it down. The keyboard settings, go through there and kind of look at it. Pretty much good by default. Two things. You want toggle zoom mode, easily accessible. I'll show you that in a sec. I set that to a mouse button. And the override shutdown, very important. O is too far away. You want it easily accessible. I like G. Up to you. But those two things, be sure you can easily access those. Here we go, hit save, and now I'll show you why these things are important. Alright, there's a few things here that we gotta cover real quick that are not talked about in this tutorial, but you absolutely have to understand how these mechanics work to be any good at the game. First up, aiming. There's actually two separate points of aim. Now, don't feel bad if you haven't figured this one out. It took me quite a few matches to put it together when I first started playing. Remember when we were looking at the Hunchback earlier in the Mech Lab, and we saw that the SRM launchers were in the left and right torso, but those medium lasers were in the left and right arms? Well, that's very important because you actually have to aim the arms at a separate point with the crosshairs than you aim torso-mounted weapons like the SRMs. You see how the crosshair in the middle of the screen there? See how it's a circle inside of the plus sign? That is not cosmetic. The circle part is for your arms, and the plus sign is for your torso. Well, what if I can't remember what weapons are in what? No worries, we can see that right here, right now, during the match, at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Shows us all the different weapons. See the two medium pulses and the two Ultra AC5s? They're in a bracket of their own, and next to that, there's the circle icon. So those four are in the arm-mounted weapons that we aim with the circle part. And the three SRMs, they're in their own bracket with the plus sign, those are torso. So, this is why we turned off the arm lock. Super important, because with the arm lock on, and I can actually force the toggle back on by holding down the left shift. So I hold down left shift, we see that the two aiming icons, the circle and the plus, are locked together, and they're stuck to the torso. They can't go any farther than the torso can look up and down. See, it maxes out there in the down, and it maxes out there on the up, and maxes out here on the right. So it's pretty constricted. Now, if we had the arm lock turned off, the arms can float independently of the torso and can move quite a bit farther beyond the maximum of the torso. So you see the circle part, it's moving way farther to the right, way farther up. Look, you see the gun at the right of the cockpit. Ah, we can dance around. That's me moving the arm, and it moves quite a bit farther down too. So it even moves faster too. Look at that. The circle part moves a lot faster now that it's not set to lock. So I can get those guns on target faster, which is always better. Alright, next up, weapon range. Your weapons do not have an infinite range. In fact, there's a good chance you might be firing them and doing no good at all, just giving your position away, or doing significantly reduced damage and wasting your ammo. So, how do you know? Well, next to, in the bottom right, next to the name, it's, for example, medium pulse laser and then 220M, which means 220 meters. Now, up to that range, it will do its full damage potential. Anything beyond 220, it will start to do exponentially less damage until you get to double the listed number, and then it stops doing damage at all. So, from 220 to 440, it starts doing less and less damage till you hit 440, and then it does 0. Anything beyond then, no good. Pretty much all weapons work like this. The Ultra AC5s there go out to 600. From 600 to 1200, it starts doing reduced damage until nothing. But autocannons like that, they have a travel time. The ballistic weapons, they're they don't go at the speed of light, so you actually have to compensate with leading the target and whatnot. So their effective range is more based on how far you can hit with them rather than the damage potential. Anyway, there are some notable exceptions. The SRMs, when it says 270, it means 270. Anything beyond the 270 with a short-range missile, it does 0 damage. Another notable exception is the long-range missiles, the LRMs, that lock on. Now, they don't actually arm until they've flown a minimum amount of distance. So, when you get a lock on with the LRMs, you have to be sure that your target is 180 meters or farther. Anything closer than 180 with an LRM will do 0 damage. Now, how's an easy way to tell this is actually the color code at the bottom right there. You see how all of them are listed in green text right now? That means that they're within their maximum damage potential. Now, if I move a bit, now we see the medium pulse laser turns to yellow. That means they're at reduced damage potential, and if they're listed as black, that means there's 0 damage potential. So, that's a quick way to glance to tell if you're within the range. Also, just to the right of the crosshairs, we see there's the number 213M. That means whatever I'm looking at is 213 meters away, which would be this building right here, which is well within the medium pulse laser's full damage potential. But the other end of that same building is 239 meters away, so slightly reduced. Alright, and finally, heat management. The most important thing about playing this game is heat management. I don't know if you've noticed, every time I fire my medium pulse, see that little bar goes up, red bar goes up 13-14%, does that every time I fire. Now, with the medium pulse lasers, by the time they're able to fire again, the heat has dissipated. That's where those heat sinks come in. That's why they were so important. Now, basically, yes, these medium pulses are heat neutral, but once you start throwing in the SRMs and firing these ultra autocannons off, then heat jumps up pretty quickly. Although this is a very heat efficient build.
Heat level
I
critical.
like it so much. Once you hear heat critical, look at that number, pay attention to it, and as you play with the build more, you kind of realize how much
heat level critical.
each one of your firing groups is going to add to that heat. You do not want it to go above about 95%.
Heat level
Here's
critical.
why. Boom. You exceed 100%, this happens. Totally shut down, you can't move, can't do anything. And while you're shut down, depending on how high over 100% you go,
Heat level
you start
critical.
to take internal damage. And you can actually kill yourself from that, which is very embarrassing. It will say Tsukasa has killed Tsukasa. It is not cool. Let's see if I can get it.
Heat
You
level
get it up to
critical.
like 95% or so, like that. And then Alpha Strike. That's going to go way over. You're shut down for longer. And you can see now in the bottom left, my center torso is yellow. I've damaged myself. Not cool. So, that's the basics of the heat management. And I think that about wraps it up for this episode. Next time, I'm going to show you
Target
guys
acquired.
some tricks on how to take people out quickly and we're gonna do a proper match and throw it all together. So, stay tuned for part 2. Hope you did enjoy it. Maybe learn something. Don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe for more. Until next time, have a good one.